I grew up in a small town in the Philippines where houses were close together and everybody knew each other's business. Most nights were quiet, except for barking dogs, singing crickets, and the occasional motorcycle passing down the road. When I was 16, my family owned a mixed-breed dog named Bruno. He wasn't particularly aggressive or protective. He was the type of dog that would happily greet strangers and spend most of the day sleeping under our porch. That's why what happened during one summer still bothers me years later. It started after my grandfather passed away. He lived with us for most of my childhood and spent nearly every evening sitting beneath a large mango tree behind our house. After he died from natural causes, the family held a wake and buried him in the local cemetery. Everything seemed normal afterward. Except Bruno changed. 3 nights after the funeral, I was lying in bed when I heard him barking nonstop outside. At first, I ignored it. Dogs barked at cats, rats, and random noises all the time. But after nearly 20 minutes, I got annoyed and looked through my bedroom window. Bruno was standing in the backyard, completely still, facing the mango tree. He barked once, then twice, then growled. The strange thing was that he wasn't looking around like dogs usually do when they're chasing something. He was staring at one specific spot beneath the tree. I couldn't see anything there. Eventually, my father went outside and dragged him back to the porch. The next morning, everyone laughed about it. "Maybe he misses Grandpa," my mother joked. At the time, I laughed too. But things got stranger. Every night around midnight, Bruno would return to the same location. Same spot, same direction, same behavior, standing motionless while staring beneath the mango tree. Sometimes he'd bark, sometimes he'd whine, sometimes he'd simply stare. One evening, I decided to check it myself. I grabbed a flashlight and walked into the backyard. Bruno followed closely behind me. As I approached the tree, the dog became nervous. His tail dropped. His ears flattened. I remember feeling a sudden chill despite the warm weather. The beam of my flashlight swept across the grass. Nothing. No animals, no people. No movement. Then Bruno began growling. A deep, low growl I'd never heard before. I pointed the flashlight toward the exact area he was staring at. Still nothing. Yet Bruno refused to move another step. I eventually gave up and returned inside. That night, I had trouble sleeping. Around 2 a.m., I woke up to Bruno scratching at my bedroom door. He wasn't supposed to be inside, but somehow he'd gotten in through the back entrance. The dog looked terrified. He kept pacing and whining. Then he sat beside my bed and stared toward the window. I looked outside. The mango tree was visible under the moonlight. And for a second, I thought I saw someone standing beneath it. A dark, human-shaped figure. I blinked. It was gone. I convinced myself I was half asleep. The following day, I told my cousin about it. He immediately became serious. He asked where exactly I'd seen the figure. When I pointed toward the tree, he got quiet. Then he told me something I'd never heard before. Years ago, before our house was built, a man had reportedly taken his own life on that property, specifically from that mango tree. I thought he was messing with me. But later, my grandmother confirmed she'd heard the same story from older residents. I didn't know whether to believe it. Still, I couldn't stop thinking about it. A week later, things escalated. I was watching television late at night when Bruno suddenly jumped up and sprinted toward the backyard. His barking was louder than I'd ever heard. My father and I ran outside. Bruno was at the mango tree again. Except this time, he wasn't just barking. He was lunging at something, snapping his jaws, backing away. Then charging forward again, like he was trying to keep someone away from the house. My father shined a flashlight toward the area. Nothing was there. Yet Bruno continued acting like he was confronting a person. Then something happened I'll never forget. The dog suddenly yelped. Not a normal bark, a scream. He stumbled backward as if something had kicked him. Neither my father nor I saw anything touch him. but Bruno flew back several feet and hit the ground. The moment it happened, every sound in the area stopped. No insects, no dogs, nothing. The silence felt unnatural. My father grabbed Bruno and rushed him inside. Thankfully, he wasn't seriously injured. But from that night on, he refused to go near the mango tree, even during daylight. If anyone tried leading him there, he'd panic and pull away. A month later, my father hired workers to cut the tree down. He said it was old and could become dangerous during storms. Part of me thinks he had another reason. The workers removed the entire tree, including most of the roots. After that, Bruno returned to normal. No more midnight barking, no more growling, no more staring into empty darkness. Life went on. A few years later, my family moved away. Before leaving, I visited the backyard one last time. The tree was gone. Only a patch of dirt remained. As I stood there, one of our elderly neighbors walked over and asked if we were moving. I said yes. Then I casually mentioned how strange Bruno used to act around that tree. The old man nodded immediately, like he already knew. Then he said something that still gives me chills. "Your dog wasn't the first one." I asked what he meant. He pointed toward the empty patch of ground. Every dog that lived near that tree barked at the same spot. I waited for him to laugh. He never did. Instead, he simply walked away. To this day, I don't know what Bruno saw beneath that mango tree. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was just an animal hidden in the roots. But whenever I remember the fear in that dog's eyes, I find it hard to believe that explanation. Because I've never seen an animal look that terrified before, and whatever was out there, it seemed to disappear the moment the tree was gone. After the old neighbor told me that every dog in the area had barked at the same spot, I couldn't stop thinking about it. For years, I tried convincing myself there was a logical explanation. Maybe the dog smelled something buried underground. Maybe there had been wild animals living around the roots. Maybe all of it was just a coincidence. Eventually, life moved on. I graduated, got a job, and moved to Manila. The story became one of those strange childhood memories I occasionally brought up with friends. Most of them laughed it off. I almost did too, until 8 years later. My grandmother called me one evening. She sounded nervous. She told me that the family who bought our old house had moved out unexpectedly. When I asked why, she hesitated. Then she said their dog had been acting strangely. The moment she said that, I felt a knot form in my stomach. Apparently, the new owners had adopted a German Shepherd named Rocky. According to neighbors, Rocky was well-trained and calm. But after living there for several months, he developed a habit that sounded disturbingly familiar. Every night, he sat in the backyard, facing the exact spot where the mango tree used to stand. The tree had been removed years earlier. There was nothing there anymore, just dirt and grass. Yet Rocky would sit motionless for hours, staring at the ground. The family thought he was sick. They took him to a veterinarian. The dog was perfectly healthy. Then things got worse. One night, Rocky refused to come inside. His owners went out to get him. When they reached the backyard, they found him growling at the empty patch of earth. Not barking, not moving, just growling. His eyes were fixed on something they couldn't see. A week later, the family left. They didn't tell anyone the exact reason. They simply packed their belongings and moved. At first, I thought it was another rumor. Then curiosity got the better of me. A few months later, while visiting relatives, I decided to see the property for myself. The house was abandoned. The front gate was locked. Grass had begun growing over parts of the yard. Standing outside the fence brought back memories I hadn't thought about in years. Bruno barking, the dark figure, the silence. I should have left. Instead, I climbed over the fence. The backyard looked smaller than I remembered. The patch where the mango tree once stood was still visible. The grass there seemed thinner than everywhere else. I walked toward it. Nothing happened. No strange noises, no shadows. I actually felt relieved. Maybe the entire thing had been exaggerated over time. Then I noticed something sticking out of the ground. It looked like part of a root. Curious, I knelt down and brushed away some dirt. What I uncovered wasn't a root. It was wood. Dark, weathered wood. A piece of it. I dug a little more. More wood appeared. The pieces formed a rough shape, almost like part of a wooden box. A chill ran through me. I suddenly remembered something my grandfather once told me when I was very young. Back then, I didn't understand what he meant. He had pointed toward the mango tree and said, "Some things should stay buried." At the time, I thought he was talking about treasure. Now, I wasn't so sure. A loud bark suddenly exploded behind me. I spun around. A stray dog stood near the fence. It wasn't barking at me. It was staring directly at the hole I'd uncovered. The dog began growling. The same deep growl Bruno used to make. Then another dog appeared. Then another. Within moments, 3 stray dogs stood in the yard. All of them focused on the exposed wood. None looked at me. Every hair on my body stood up. Without thinking, I grabbed loose dirt and shoved it back into the hole. The second I covered the wood, the growling stopped. The dogs fell silent. One by one, they turned and walked away. I didn't stay another minute. I climbed the fence and left. To this day, I don't know what was buried beneath that tree. And honestly, I don't want to know. Because one thing became clear that afternoon. Whatever Bruno had been watching all those years ago was still there, waiting beneath the ground, and every dog that passed by somehow knew it. When I was 19, I made extra money pet sitting through an app that connected animal owners with local sitters. Most jobs were easy. Feed a dog, refill a water bowl, maybe stay overnight if the owners were out of town. I had watched dozens of pets without a single problem. Then I accepted a booking that made me quit pet sitting forever. The job came from a couple who lived about 40 minutes outside Portland, Oregon. Their profile seemed normal. They owned a 3-year-old golden retriever named Charlie. The booking request was for 4 nights. The couple was flying to Florida for a family emergency and needed somebody to stay at the house while they were gone. The pay was good, really good, enough that I accepted without thinking twice. The house was located on a heavily wooded road with only a few homes scattered around. When I arrived, the owners were already loading luggage into their SUV. They seemed friendly enough. The husband showed me where Charlie's food was kept, while his wife explained the dog's routine. Everything seemed straightforward. Then, just before they left, the husband said something odd. He crouched beside Charlie and scratched behind his ears. "Don't let him outside after midnight," I laughed. "Why? Does he run away?" The husband didn't laugh back. "No, he just gets weird." His wife immediately interrupted. "He's kidding." But I noticed the uncomfortable look they exchanged. A few minutes later, they drove away. I remember watching their SUV disappear between the trees. Charlie sat beside me on the porch. He seemed like the friendliest dog I'd ever met. A typical golden retriever, happy, energetic, completely harmless. The first day went perfectly. We played fetch in the backyard. I watched movies, fed him dinner. Nothing unusual happened. Around 11 that night, Charlie curled up beside the couch while I played video games. At exactly midnight, he suddenly lifted his head. The change was immediate. His ears perked up, his body stiffened, his eyes focused on the sliding glass door leading to the backyard. Charlie remained completely still for nearly 10 minutes. Then he returned to the couch and fell asleep. I figured he'd heard a raccoon or deer. The next morning, everything was normal again. The second day passed without incident. That night, however, things escalated. Once again, midnight arrived. Once again, Charlie stood up. This time, he walked directly to the sliding glass door and began growling. Not barking, growling. A deep sound that didn't seem possible from such a friendly dog. The hair on his back stood up. I looked outside. Nothing. At least, nothing that I could see. Then Charlie did something that made me uneasy. He backed away from the door, as if whatever was outside had moved closer. I checked every window. The backyard appeared empty. Eventually, Charlie settled down, but I noticed he slept beside my bedroom door instead of his usual spot downstairs, almost like he wanted to guard it. The following morning, I texted the owners. I mentioned Charlie's strange behavior. The wife responded almost immediately. Just keep him inside after midnight. That was it. No explanation, no details, just that sentence. I found it strange, but decided not to push further. That evening, a storm rolled into the area. Heavy rain hammered the roof for hours. The wind shook tree branches against the windows. Around 10 o'clock, the power went out. The house fell completely dark. Luckily, I had my phone flashlight. Charlie seemed nervous but manageable. I lit a few candles and waited for the electricity to return. Midnight arrived. Charlie immediately stood, growled, and ran toward the sliding glass door. I followed. Rain pounded against the glass. The backyard was barely visible. Then lightning flashed. For less than a second, the yard lit up, and I saw someone standing near the tree line. I froze. The figure was tall, completely motionless, just standing there, watching the house. The darkness returned before I could make out details. I stared into the rain. Nothing. Another flash of lightning. The figure was gone. I told myself it had been a tree, or a trick of the light, but Charlie continued growling. He wouldn't stop, not for nearly an hour. Needless to say, I barely slept. The next morning, I walked the property looking for footprints. The ground was soaked from the storm. If somebody had been standing there should have been evidence. I found nothing. No footprints, no signs of anyone. I started feeling ridiculous. Maybe exhaustion had gotten to me. Maybe Charlie had simply reacted to thunder. That explanation worked right up until the third night. At around 11:45 p.m., Charlie was lying beside the couch when he suddenly jumped up. His eyes were fixed on the hallway leading toward the kitchen. A low growl escaped his throat. I felt a chill. Charlie? The dog ignored me. His gaze never moved. Then he began barking, loud, aggressive, the kind of bark that says danger. I grabbed my phone flashlight and walked toward the kitchen. Nothing was there. Every door was locked, every window secured. Yet Charlie continued barking at the hallway. Then he charged forward, past me, into the kitchen. I followed. He stopped near the back door, the door leading outside. His nose pressed against the bottom edge. He sniffed repeatedly, then started scratching frantically. I looked down. Mud. Fresh mud. Someone had left muddy footprints just outside the glass. My heart dropped. The footprints weren't old. They hadn't been there earlier. They looked recent. Very recent. I turned on my flashlight and pointed it through the glass. The footprints continued across the patio, then disappeared into darkness. Charlie growled again. I locked the deadbolt even though it was already locked. For the first time during the booking, I felt genuinely scared. I called the homeowner. No answer. I texted him photos of the footprints. No response. By 1 a.m, I finally convinced myself whoever had left them was gone. Maybe a hiker, maybe a hunter, maybe someone lost. I returned to the living room. Charlie refused to leave the kitchen. At around 2 a.m, I heard a sound from upstairs. A single footstep. I froze. The house should have been empty. I listened carefully. Silence. Then another step. Slow, deliberate, directly above me. Charlie heard it too. His head snapped upward. Every muscle in his body tensed. Another footstep echoed through the ceiling. Then another. Someone was walking around upstairs, and according to the homeowners, nobody else was supposed to be there.